First of all, we're going to come off of this huge slide of my face. Alright, so first of all, thank you so much, guys, for allowing me to be here. As they mentioned, my name is Tara Brown, and I am the Membership and Events Coordinator for Breck's Baton Rouge Zoo, which is right up the road. I am a proud Manship alum. I actually graduated in 2012, so I'm only about 2.5 years ahead of the seniors in the room. So hopefully we can just kind of have a really good dialogue tonight, and because I'm only a couple years ahead of you guys, I know what this is like. I know what it's like to sit right where you are. I was in PRSSA. I came to these meetings, and so I hope that tonight we can just kind of all be on the same level here and just start a good conversation about what I do and the awesome work that I get to do. So at the zoo, I'm the Membership and Events Coordinator, and so my job includes a lot of ands, which is pretty typical in any type of PR position. So I do membership and events and social media and some crisis communication. So that's a lot to swallow some days, but the biggest part of my job is doing all of the events for the Baton Rouge Zoo. And we actually have 25 to 30 signature events per year. If you start doing the math, that's more than one every other week. So they definitely keep me very busy at the zoo, which is great. But it's a lot. So they asked me to talk a little bit about what my experiences were at Manship. And these are some of the things that I did. I did PRSSA, I did do the Bateman team, which is awesome, and I would absolutely suggest anyone to do it because it gave me some really wonderful experience. I actually did 2 internships while I was in college, which I would absolutely suggest to anyone that's sitting here. Because if I wouldn't have done the internships that I did, I would not have gotten either one of the full-time positions that I've had since I graduated. I'm sure you've heard over and over again that it's all about networking and what you can do and who you know, and that's absolutely true. While you're in college, you should be working on diversifying yourself, not only for your own good, but just setting yourself apart from other people is going to be the thing that gets you that interview, that gets you the job. If people remember your name in a positive way, that's only going to get you super far. So all of this, you probably just looked over it and not super important, but just a little bit of background. So the events that we do at the zoo, obviously our biggest demographic are women that have children. And since it is the zoo, that's where most people who come. Like I said, we have 25 different events, and these range anywhere from an exclusive event where we do about 20 to 30 people to last weekend we did Boo at the Zoo and we had 27,000 people. So if you want to talk about anything from a small event with 20 people to 27,000, I've done it, and let me tell you, no event is the same, and you have to be flexible and ready to do whatever is called of you. So some of the events that we do every year, we have City Appreciation Days, which is one of those smaller events where we just kind of open it up to entire communities and say, hey, if you live in Baker or Zachary or Baton Rouge, you can come to the zoo and get half off admission. These events are very low maintenance. It's pretty much just inviting people to come out, getting dignitaries to come out. Pretty easy peasy. Zippity Zoo Fest is the zoo's annual birthday party. And instead of just doing cake and things like that, we actually do an entire festival where we have bands come out, cheerleading groups, dance groups, all of these kind of things. The biggest thing that we do every year is Boo at the Zoo. And like I said, we had 27,000 people show up over 4 days. And whenever it comes to doing a huge event for that many people, it really can get very overwhelming very quickly, and so we always have what everyone knows as 10 gun moments, which of course is make it work. So in these cases, I was actually going to talk about Boo at the Zoo, but anyway, one of the big events that we also did this year for the first time was hope that some of you heard about it through various channels. But we did our first ever fundraiser event in over 15 years for the zoo. And we were able to raise about $60,000 for the zoo, which was really great. And that was about 2,000 people that we had. I'm sorry, y'all, I'm all over the place. All right, so we're about to have a Tim Gunn moment right now and make it work. So the biggest thing about doing events is to be flexible and to think about what are your goals for each event. For each event, you should always have both a long-term and a short-term goal. So for example, for Brew at the Zoo, our short-term goal was obviously to be able to make money for the zoo, because that's what we wanted to do, be able to get some additional funds in. But if you're just looking at your short-term goal, you're never going to get where you want to go. And so the long-term goal for us and Brew at the Zoo was actually to get people in this kind of donor cycle that we try to get everyone on at some point. And that is to get someone interested in our organization by coming to a fun event like Brew at the Zoo, where you get to come to the zoo, drink beer. Who doesn't want to do that? So we sell tickets to this event, and the majority of the people that came were actually, 20 to 30 years old, which most people who come to the zoo, they're not 20 to 30 years old. They're usually a 35-year-old with 2 kids and a stay-at-home mom. And so the entire long-term point of this event was to get people like you guys, who are newly 21, normally wouldn't come to the zoo, to come, see what we have, see what we offer, and say, hey, the zoo's pretty cool. And then whenever, maybe a couple years down the road, whenever you do get married, have kids, all those different kind of things, you would become a member. And then after you become a member of the zoo, you have a little bit more money, you would eventually become a donor, and then a long-term donor. So this is just one of those examples of how you need to use both short-term and long-term goals for each one of your events. With each event, when you're keeping those goals in mind, you have to ask all of the who, what, when, where, how, and why. Because if you're not answering every single one of those questions, then you shouldn't do it. For example, this weekend we have our Veterans Day at the zoo, where we invite all of the veterans in the local area to come into the zoo for free with their family members. But we had a little bit of a difference of opinion in our office about what exactly this event should look like. A lot of people thought that it should be booths everywhere and having things for people to be able to give out, whereas myself and some of the other members of our staff really felt that the focus should be much more on actually getting members of the community to be able to come out and take advantage of this. And so whenever we went through our entire who, what, when, where, how, we ended up deciding that the majority of our focus should be on getting the people to come in and the people that we're trying to appreciate to come to the zoo and be able to take advantage of those benefits that we had. So, like I said, what are your goals? Short term, long term. If it doesn't fit, don't do it. And if it doesn't feel right, then don't do it. If it's not going to serve your Publix, then don't do it. There's a lot of pressure that comes from doing these kind of events. There's lots of internal pressure, external pressure. But you have to be very true to your organization and what you know to be true and what you need to do. So, just a couple of things. Gotta throw a little Beyonce in there always. But whenever it comes to events, there's a lot of misconception about what it means to be an event coordinator. It sounds like a lot of fun. You're like, yeah, I get to plan parties all the time, which is true. You do get to plan parties sometimes, and it is a lot of fun. But events are a lot of work, and I think that that's something that a lot of people don't usually acknowledge. And actually, if you're doing your job right, a lot of times people won't notice what you've done. And that's what, as an event planner, what I attempt to do and hope that my events do is that people can come and relax and enjoy the event, and me and all of the planning and all of the behind the scenes just completely fade into the background. So this is a list of things that are super important, and I really think very important with anyone being a professional, and especially a young professional. But whenever it comes to being an event planner also, you've got to hustle. You have got to work for what you want, and that's true across the board. But especially whenever it comes to events, you have to ask for what you want. You can't ever be afraid of someone saying no. When they ask me what's the best piece of professional advice you've ever received, and that's don't be afraid of someone telling you no. And don't ever be afraid of the ask. Because the worst thing that they could tell you is no. It says nothing about, your personal worth or anything else. If they tell you no, you just move on to the next thing. So you have to be willing to know exactly what you want and go after it and ask for it and keep asking for it until you get what you need for your organization. Always be the first person to show up and the last person to leave. Whether it's your event or not, always be available to the other people that are putting on the event. I am sure that if you came to PRSSA and you offered to help beforehand, they would certainly accept your help. And if you stayed late to help pick up trash, they would certainly accept your help. And that's true no matter if you're 5 years old until you're 95 years old. And that's going to be one of those things that sets you apart from other people. And people are going to notice that, and it'll pay off in the long run. You have to be indispensable. The thing that I try to do with any job at any position that I do is that I want them to feel like they could never do it without me. And a lot of that is, being there early, staying late, things like that, but just being the go-to person as much as possible and always being available. Always show gratitude. Nobody likes someone that's ungrateful. And so no matter if it's, seeing the janitor who is helping to pick up trash at your event, make sure you tell them thank you. Because not only because it's going to come back, but just because it's the right thing to do. You've got to be flexible, y'all. There is no way that I could survive doing what I do if I wasn't flexible. Because there are days where I work super long hours, and you just have to be willing to go with the flow and do whatever needs to be done. For example, at Boo at the Zoo this weekend, we had a record 5 people who passed out, 2 of which were pregnant. And so it is absolutely not in my job description to help a woman who is pregnant and has passed out. But whenever the call came over the radio and I was the closest person there, that's what I did. I went and you go and help out as much as you can, you smooth things over, and luckily everyone was okay. But it's just another one of those things of, it's not in my job description to do these things, but it doesn't matter because it's my event and I'm responsible for it, and I want people to have a good experience, including the poor pregnant woman who passed out in the concession line. Find yourself a team. No matter where you are, even if you are in a good situation or a bad job situation, always surround yourself with good people, and that will pay back in the dividends again and again and again. And that all goes back to being grateful, being early, all of those things. But surround yourself with good people and you'll have great results. Be friendly and listen. Those should be givens at this point, but unfortunately they're not. That's one of those things that what goes around comes around. And if you're not friendly, that is going to stick to you like white on rice. And believe me, especially people in the Baton Rouge PR community, they talk and they know who is friendly, who is not, who is willing to help. And so you always want those positive attributes to be the things that stick to you. Be respectful. That's another one that should be a given. Learning basic business practices and tools. This summer, I had an intern who was lovely and did wonderful work. However, she had a very bad habit of being on her phone at all times, including during business meetings. And then afterwards, whenever she left us, she was looking for a full-time position and asked us if we would be willing to be one of her resume, what's the word I'm looking for? References, thank you. I was going to say resources. To be one of her references, and unfortunately, we had to say no. And it wasn't because she didn't do good work, because she did perfectly fine work whenever she was there, but she could not conduct herself in a professional business manner, and so therefore we didn't feel comfortable saying that we would be a reference for her. And so that's one of those things that, once again, people are always watching, and even now you need to be cultivating those professional tools, and even things that seem involuntary, like looking on your phone or anything else. You need to put the phone down and listen and take notes, because you never really know what's going to be that thing that sticks to you. Come in or at or under budget as much as possible. I would say that as much as possible while you're in school, ask for opportunities to work with a budget, because I guarantee you, whenever you walk into your first job, they're going to hand you like this crazy spreadsheet and say, here's your budget, figure it out. And you're going to it's going to be another Tim Go moment. We have to make it work. And that was something that I did not know super well whenever I left college, and it was a tough pill to swallow. It's something that was very hard for me to learn. And if you come above budget, you get in really big trouble with your boss, which is never fun. Begin working with budgets. If you can take a basic business class, do that. Ask for help. I know that there are tons of people upstairs that would love to help you with this kind of thing. Know the basic principles of design and use them. Can't tell you how many times we have had somebody call and say, hey, do you guys have a flyer for X, Y, and Z event that you're about to do? And the answer is no, we don't. But we can always whip something up in Photoshop, InDesign, whatever they need to make it work. If someone calls you and says, do you have a flyer for your event? The answer is never no. You figure out a way to be able to make a flyer, because you don't want to give them something in a medium that they didn't ask for it in. I can tell people all day that that information is on our website, it's on our Facebook, it's on our Twitter, but you need to give it to them in the medium that they ask for it in. And that's not necessarily always true, but especially when people are requesting it of you, give it to them in the medium in which they ask for. And wear comfortable shoes. One of my biggest tips, especially whenever you're working an event, is that you need to be as comfortable as possible, because you're going to be going up and down and lifting boxes and everything else. The first day of Boo at the Zoo, I walked 11.5 miles in 10 hours. And that was just because I was on my feet the entire time. I was running candy back and forth. So always dress appropriately for whatever you're doing. Be all things to all people. And they said business casual earlier, and actually business casual is always a good idea, unless you're going to be doing something that you know is going to be manual intensive and lots of labor. Things to don't do: don't be a jerk. Don't assume that you know everything. Nobody likes that person. And always be willing to learn something. It doesn't matter who you are, what your experiences are, you can always learn plenty of things about it. Okay, so now we're going to get into like the real nitty-gritty of what it's like to be an events coordinator. I love my job, and I love what I do, because I have the opportunity to work for an organization that makes a measurable impact on our community, that educates people about wild animals and wild places, and is a safe place for people to be able to bring their kids. And so that's not something that I take lightly, and it is an honor and a privilege to be able to serve people in Baton Rouge. And it's never lost on me that people trust their families and their children with us at the Baton Rouge Zoo. And so I love what I do. I can tell you there are no 2 days that are the same whenever it comes to my job. And people say that all the time. But whenever you're dealing with the public and the public is coming to you, people are crazy and they will do crazy things. And so you never really know what's going to go on. So you have to be quick on your feet. You have to be ready to go and ready to give an answer at any time. And you have to be professional in all situations. I love the diversity of the people that come to the zoo. It is red, yellow, black, and white. Everybody from 2-week-old babies all the way up come to the zoo, and that's something that's very unique about our organization. I love that I work for an ethically minded organization, and that's something that I would encourage anyone, whenever you're looking for a job, whenever you graduate, yes, to a certain extent you should take whatever jobs are offered to you, but if you don't agree with an organization and where they stand and what they believe in, you shouldn't take the job, because you're going to be miserable, and you're not going to be able to do your very best work because you don't believe in what they do. My job is really fun. Like I said, there were tons of little kids that were running around dressed up in Elsa and Frozen costumes, and it was so much fun. And I have a really great lunchtime view. I get to go walk and see the giraffes every day. So there should always be an element of fun whenever you do, as much as possible. There's great family and community focus in what I do, and I really love the fact that we get to serve the community by doing events and bringing people in. But there is definitely the uglier side of doing events. It's very easy to get burned out. That's why you have to be very protective of yourself, and you have to be do your very best work, but at the same time you have to be realistic about the fact that you're a person and you need rest and you need sleep, because you're not going to be able to do your best work if you're burnt out. And so that's another skill that would be very important for you, because you guys have a ton on your plates. You guys are going to school, a lot of you have internships, you have jobs. I remember that. It is hard to be a college student, and so props to you guys for surviving. You're doing it. But it's also the same whenever you become a professional, and you have to learn how to have that effective work-life balance, and learn how to protect yourself and do what's best for yourself. Flexibility, like I said, it really is the name of the game. For Brew at the Zoo, it was a first-time event. We'd never done it before. And so there were a lot of unknowns about, we don't know how this is going to go, what if people are going to show up, if they're going to like it, anything like that. And we had about 35 different vendors that were all coming in a 2-hour span, trying to get them into the zoo. And I'm getting phone calls right and left about people trying to get into the back gate of the zoo. And then we had 3 vendors who called and said, sorry, we're not going to be able to make it. So at that point, we had 2,000 people who were showing up, and we were already concerned about the amount of food that we were going to have, and if we were going to have enough food for everyone. And so we had a moment where we said, oh my God, look, what are we going to do? These people are expecting to be fed. We're 3 food vendors short. That's a lot whenever hungry people are there, they're drinking beer. And so what we ended up doing was asking the vendors who were there if they could make any more. We're like, listen, we know that this is crazy, but if there's anything else that you can give to us as far as getting more food, we'll reimburse you for it, but please just help us out. And luckily, they were more than happy to help us out. And so that worked out very well. But it really is, you have to be quick on your feet. You have to be ready to go at all times. It is very difficult a lot of times to create change. At the zoo, there is, the zoo's been around for 60 years, and a lot of times people want to do things the exact same that they've done for 60 years. And a lot of times change is hard to swallow for people who have been there for a long time. And so you have to work very hard to be able to lovingly, gently introduce new ideas, especially whenever you know that those new ideas are what's right for your organization. And so that's both a fun thing and a challenging thing that happens. And I don't want to scare anyone away from event planning, because it really is so much fun. And I love that, but I also want to be very realistic about what it's like. Excuse me. But it is very, very fun. You get to be creative in ways that you normally wouldn't be able to be creative. You know, I get to plan brand new events and get to come up with games for kids, and people are very receptive to those kind of things. So whenever I was talking to a couple of friends who were also Manship alums about the kind of things that they would want you guys to know from their perspective. These were a lot of things that came up. Obviously, getting experience, getting internships as much as possible. You need to be on top of all of your trends, because we obviously know that things change all the time, especially in the world of social media. So if you're not on trend, then you're out the door. You have to be more than a good writer. You have to be able to develop a voice. And this is something that's even important in my job as an events coordinator, because as I'm trying to sell my event to the public and get people to come, we need to have a strong voice that tells people, this is our organization, this is what we do, and this is why you need to come. Learn Excel, that was kind of a funny one, but also good advice. You can follow that Tumblr, which is really funny, This Advertising Life Tumblr. It's a really good picture of what an ad agency looks like. Take an internship one summer out of state, Louisiana, New York, somewhere, not Louisiana, LA, out of LA, to see how PR operates outside of Louisiana. Seek experience in different industries. Once again, diversify yourself as much as possible. Everything is not your PR class, and I'm kind of glad that there's no professors that are here whenever I tell you this. But you can learn so much in your PR classes, but you can also only learn so much in your PR classes. I have not used the ropes method since I left college. I've officially outed myself on that. But those are all good foundations of things that you need to know. Know whenever your boss comes to you and asks you to put together a communication plan, you're not going to be able to be like, R is for research and we're going to do this. You can't do that. So you need to be working now on doing things that automatically apply to the things that you're learning in your courses, so that you're not completely irrelevant whenever you walk into a job. Make connections with professionals now if you want to get a job in the future. So the way that I got both of my jobs was through connections that I made through my internships that I did in college. I was working at the Parks and Rec Commission for the East Baton Rouge Parish, which is BREC. And I was getting to the end of my last semester, had no idea what I wanted to do. But my boss came up to me and said, hey, you've done a really good job with everything that I've thrown at you. I have a friend who has this job open. Do you think that you want to throw your name in the hat? I'll be happy to be a reference for you. So of course, I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I said, sure, why not? And then through that connection, that reference, I was able to actually begin working at the Riley Center for Media and Public Affairs, which is on the lovely purple screen over here. And so I actually got to work here in the Manship School for an entire year and a half right after I graduated, which was great. But if I wouldn't have known my boss from my internship, I never would have had that connection. And even though I was a Manship student, I didn't even really know that the Riley Center was here, and I certainly didn't know that they had a job position that was open. And so it's all about being distinguished in the job that you're doing, and then working those connections, because you never know what's going to come up. And then actually the job that I have now was also through the same connection. This is an aside. If you're going to connect with someone on LinkedIn, please know them in some capacity besides just it's really easy to just click on somebody and be like, oh, we're connected now on LinkedIn. That's not the best way to actually be able to get a connection that's going to be meaningful for you. So reach out to them, ask them if they want to go out to coffee, or connect with them in some other way. Know your current events. If someone interviews you, and I've had this happen before, and they throw you a total curveball and ask you what was on the front page of the news today, you should be able to answer that question. Because if you're not, it's not just about if you're relevant to the local PR trends or whatever's going on. You need to know what's going on in the world as a whole, and you need to know what's going on in your local area. And so, yeah, you should always be checking the New York Times and all those things, because that was probably the biggest curveball I've ever been asked in an interview, was someone asked me, what's on the front page of today's paper? So, be interesting, travel, learning skills, always be ethical in everything that you do. Obviously, you guys know that. Got zooming. So basically, all in all, event planning is a lot of fun, and it's a different side of PR that a lot of people don't think about. Yes, it can be super exciting, and you can plan galas and all of these kind of things, and there's a great diversity that's there in the type of activities that you can do. And so if this is something that you're interested in, I'm always open to talking about it, and I would love to sit down for coffee or whatever else, and I hope that this wasn't too terribly scattered. I've had a very long day at work. But anyway, connect with me. My email is there, my Twitter handle is there, and I love going out for coffee and just hanging out. Actually went to coffee with Tori last semester, and we had a really great time. We were able to connect. So I'm always open to just talking about things, and I don't have the best experiences in the world. It's not like I went and worked at the New York Times or anything, but I do have a lot of experience with what you guys are going through and kind of making that transition from being a college student and then going to be a young professional, and now hopefully in the next few years I'll be making some more changes to continue going on in my career. So, any questions?